Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host Brett Murphy, and for today's video I have a brand new ranking for you all, as I am going to be ranking all of the MCU's Phase 4 movies and TV shows so far. So yes, nowadays it seems like the MCU is just shooting stuff out rapid fire. Like on a weekly basis we're getting a new movie or a new episode of something. And while some people might argue that maybe we're just getting a bit too oversaturated with MCU content, and although I may agree with certain aspects of that, I am still absolutely a Marvel fanboy, a Disney shill, whatever you want to call me. I will definitely always be there opening night, and I will be up first thing in the morning for any new episode that we get. Even if I think the majority of the content has been so far. Nevertheless, Ms. Marvel just wrapped up, Thor Love and Thunder just dropped, and the MCU isn't done yet this year anyway. I think we still have She-Hulk coming out. I think Black Panther Wakanda Forever is still slated to come out in the fall. Lots more to come, but you know what? I figured let's take a brief pause while we have a second to breathe and talk about everything that we've gotten in Phase 4 so far. Before I hop into the actual ranking itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos. So be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 13, Black Widow. Was it too little too late for this one? Maybe. Natasha deserved her own movie long before this. Nevertheless, we have it now, and it was a mix between some pretty high highs, but also some fairly low lows. ScarJo is obviously superb, but the supporting cast is brilliant as well. You have Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz, and it is that family dynamic that is probably the best part of this movie in my mind. Taskmaster was sadly, utterly, and completely wasted, and that other villain too, I can't even be bothered to remember his name. That's how forgettable he was as well. But most of the backstory and Black Widow program stuff was pretty good. It has probably the best opening credits sequence of any of the MCU projects, because they don't really do that. Nevertheless, this one totally slapped. But the action was just alright. I think there were times that they totally forgot that Natasha is just a human, she's not a super soldier or anything, and the CGI was so-so. Number 12, What If? I had a fair bit of hype heading into this one because what if is one of the greatest questions you can possibly ask in any of these universes. Marvel, DC, Star Wars, people are asking that stuff all the time. So the fact that we were getting an animated series that was going to explore some of these wild ideas was a pretty big thing. And just like Black Widow, this one was a mixed bag. There are some ideas in here that they totally nailed, but some that I was really excited for and they just fell completely flat on their face. The animation style though is totally unique and something I really appreciated. They didn't just go with the norm, whatever that might be nowadays. It was really something different. Most of the voice acting was excellent, and though I personally would have preferred more of a straightforward anthology series rather than it being so interconnected, I did definitely still enjoy what we got, and I can't wait for season 2. I also think that this is a great opportunity for the creators and writers of that show to take the many constructive criticisms that were given about season 1 and give us a bigger and better season 2. Number 11, Hawkeye. I really did truly love parts of this show, like the Christmas setting for instance, because I am a huge Christmas guy, but there were other elements like the tracksuit mafia that I couldn't have possibly cared less for. One of the major highlights is Clint's arc. They really take the time to humanize his story. They show just how much Natasha's death is affecting him, they show his age a little bit, he has hearing aids now, we get to see more of the family stuff, and all of that totally worked for me. Haley Steinfeld was a dream fan casting come true as Kate Bishop. Not only does she totally nail it, but her and Clint's relationship and their dynamic is likely the best part of the entire show. On top of that, it brought back Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova and also introduced us to Alaqua Cox's Maya Lopez as Echo, who will now be getting her own show. Oh, and who can forget, it reintroduces us to the big man himself, Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. Aside from that, like I said, there are some things I really couldn't care less for, like the tracksuit mafia. They were just simply comedic relief. They were awful. The action was fairly underwhelming, and the LARPers just really annoyed me, truth be told. Number 10. Thor, Love and Thunder. Wow, I was, really disappointed in this one. No, I didn't hate it at all or anything by any means, but considering Thor Ragnarok is in my top 10 MCU projects in general, the hype and anticipation for this one was pretty friggin' high. But I just think that this one was a bit too much at times. There is a lot of cringy stuff. Most of the humor didn't land with me this time around. Thor is dumber than ever. I think they took that a step too far as well. They kind of found that sweet spot in like the Ragnarok Infinity War era, and I just think that they took it too far this time. Not to mention the emotional beats just really didn't stick. Like, you know, people complain about the MCU interjecting these little jokes and ruining all of the emotional moments. Well, it's at its peak here if you ask me. Just lots of issues. However, it is mostly saved by a kick-ass soundtrack, a bright, colorful, and vibrant adventure, some solid action, but above all else, Natalie Portman returning as Jane Foster, and now the mighty Thor, and Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher. Number 9. Miss Marvel. I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Heading into this show, I was really not looking forward to it at all. I thought the trailers were pretty awful. But I ended up really loving the first 2 episodes. Iman Vellani was born for this role. Another perfect casting choice for the MCU, and her passion for this role in this project shines through each and every time she is on screen. I just wanted to give props to this show in general for taking a more unique and refreshing approach, because it is just a fun, goofy, lighthearted little adventure, and I just really dug that. But the best part, in all honesty, was the normal life stuff. The stuff with her family, the stuff with her home life, school, all of the coming of age stuff, trying to fit in, the cultural learning as she is from Pakistan and her family as well, of course, and we eventually do go there too. All that are just the highlights of this show. The superhero stuff, on the other hand, was just okay. And this may be a hot take, but I actually didn't mind the changing of her powers. I totally understand it and thought it was okay. But the villains sucked, and the story continuously just got a little bit weaker as we went along, with episode 5 being a low point. But thankfully, the finale was a total blast, and somehow has me saying that I can't wait to see the Marvels, which I never thought I would say. Number 8. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I went into this one really wanting to love it, and though I didn't love it, I still ended up really liking it. Sam and Bucky are the MCU's new dynamic duo, and their banter and back and forth just feels so authentic and genuine. I love it. It does start slow, but it ends with a bang. Sam is our new Captain America, and he looks damn good in that suit. Bucky's redemption arc comes full circle, and we get just a brief tease of a new team that is being formed behind the scenes. Speaking of that new team that is being performed, there is nowhere near enough people out there talking about Wyatt Russell's performance in this show. The guy was so good, and I really hope to see more of him down the road. The villains, the Flag Smashers or whatever, yeah, they also sucked. They were really underwhelming, and they had super wishy-washy motives, and a lot of the action sadly felt very inauthentic and hollow. Number 7. Eternals. Yeah, I feel a lot of people are going to really disagree with me on this one, and I am perfectly okay with that. This may be, and probably is, the best looking MCU project we have ever gotten. And look, I mean, hear me out. This movie offered us up 10 new characters, thousands of years to explore, and quite literally changes everything that we know about this universe. And I personally believe that they gave us all of these things in a very seamless fashion. So an extra special shout out and major thank you to Chloe Zhao for that. It is, yes, a bit too long, and Crow was a useless and wasted villain, but aside from that, this movie is truly magnificent and a stunning spectacle. Number 6. Moon Knight. Heading into Moon Knight, I was insanely hyped. It was probably among my top 3 to 5 most anticipated MCU projects. However, I did feel that the first 3 episodes were just okay at best. Thankfully though, the final 3 episodes were fan-freaking-tastic, with episode 5 being my favorite episode out of any of the MCU shows so far. Maybe among my favorite things that the MCU has ever done. And that is all thanks to the man himself, Oscar Isaac, who is very unsurprisingly phenomenal as both Mark Spector and Stephen Grant. The Moon Knight suits themselves translated perfectly to the live action screen, both Moon Knight and Mr. Knight. May Kalamawi as Layla, and I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right, even though I know I am not, is a total scene stealer, and I literally jumped up out of my chair when she got her powers. She looked great and was a total badass. Ethan Hawke, in my humble opinion, played a top-tier MCU villain. I loved his cold, calculated, very reserved, albeit ruthless methods and demeanor. Extra special shout out to F. Murray Abraham for delivering us that epic voice of Khonshu. Okay, sure, it wasn't as good as I was hoping for. I really did want a 10 out of 10 show, and it just wasn't quite that. But I was left pretty satisfied and chomping at the bit for a season 2 after that ending. Number 5. WandaVision. Yeah, this one was pretty much Elizabeth Olsen's show, and she gives a beautifully powerful performance, but I would personally argue that Paul Bettany was almost as good and complimented her quite well. This show was just a weird, wacky, quirky, but unique and undeniably wild ride. While, yes, they did tease us with a whole heck of a lot that didn't really pay off, and I could not have cared less for Agatha Harkness as the villain. In fact, I just outright do not like her as a villain. There is nevertheless no denying at all that this is the most creative and risky project that the MCU has ever taken on. Number 4. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is yet another Marvel character that we could have used in the MCU a long time ago. Simu Liu crushes it as the titular Shang-Chi. This man was born to play this role. He is the perfect embodiment of the character. Tony Leung, though, as the real Mandarin is amazing, just straight up awesome. The martial arts and the wire work are true standouts. They were fantastic, and the story was well told. I didn't really care much personally for the final fight with the Dweller in the Dark. I just felt like we went from really cool stuff, again, like all the martial arts stuff, to this generic, fighting CGI monsters in the final act. I would have preferred if it was just Shang-Chi versus his father as the final fight, because that was way better and way more emotional. And sadly, a lot of the comedy didn't really land with me either, and I also felt that there were a few characters that were just a bit too wasted. Number 3. Loki. I really didn't think in the build-up that we needed this show at all. Loki had come back from the dead so many times, and we had gotten so much of Hiddleston. I just didn't think that it was necessary, but boy oh boy, was I wrong! Tom Hiddleston is wonderful once again as Loki, of course, as expected, but I would personally argue that Owen Wilson and Sophia DiMartino were just as good. This show too, just like Eternals, changes everything that we thought we knew about this universe. It proposes a very big, bold new perspective on everything, and where season 1 left off, I'm going to assume that it's going to alter everything going forward as well. It's funny, it's got a ton of heart, and makes some really daring choices. Not to mention, Jonathan Majors is awesome. Please, Marvel, Kevin Feige, whoever, give me more Kang the Conqueror, and bring on season 2 of Loki ASAP. Number 2. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, this one is probably a bit controversial as well, but I unapologetically love it. It's got director Sam Raimi's fingerprints all over it, from the camera angles, to the editing, to the visual style, and I am all for it as a massive fan of Raimi. Benedict Cumberbatch is back and better than ever as Doctor Strange. Xochitl Gomez as America Chavez is an exciting and refreshing new addition. Benedict Wong as Wong is as lovable as ever, but it is undoubtedly Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, that steals the show. Sure, yes, the multiverse wasn't as mad as we were hoping, but I personally think I ended up loving what we got even more. Number 1. Spider-Man No Way Home. Okay folks, plain and simple, this movie delivered. It's not too often that the hype is so high and it delivers, but this movie delivered. It was the live-action Spider-Verse movie that we could have only dreamed of a short few years ago. Tom Holland and much of the supporting cast are at their best. The villains, at least most of them, are exceptional. Toby and Andrew being brought back brought a tear to my eye. Seeing Charlie Cox make a brief appearance had me screaming. It has some truly devastating emotional beats, but also some very uplifting and triumphant ones too. Sure, there were a few inconsistencies and a few other little gripes and odds and ends that I had, but all in all, the more I think about this movie, the more I love it, and it is definitely up in my top 3 favorite theater-going experiences of my lifetime. And without a doubt, by a fair bit, I'd probably say, it is the best thing that the MCU has given us in Phase 4 yet. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. While you're at it, be sure to let me know how you would have ranked all of the MCU's Phase 4 movie and shows so far. And don't forget to suggest what ranking you'd like to see me cover next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe, thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.